A name is a word used for identification. Names can identify a class or category of things, or a single thing, either uniquely or within a given context. So that when Moshe Rabbeinu claims that upon informing the Bnei Yisrael of the impending Geula, their response will be Ma Shmo, which at face value they would be seeking to know the identity of the force that has empowered Moshe to undertake the release of the Bnei Yisrael from Mitzrayim. This pshat reading of the text is rejected by Rashi from the standpoint of the Pshuta Shel Mikra on account of the fact that the identity of this force, this God, has already been established in the very same pasuk. This is the Elokei Avotechem, the God of their forefathers, the God of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. There certainly would have been a tradition regarding an interaction between the invisible God and the Avot, and despite an absence of 200 years or so, Moshe has already linked his shlichut to the God of those Avot. Hence, Moshe would have no basis for stating that the response of the people would be Ma Shmo. A more nuanced approach is to look at the role of a Shem, a name, when referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, within the context of Yahadut. In Judaism, the name of God represents the Jewish conception of an interaction, a relationship between God and the Jewish people. And throughout history, the Bnei Yisrael, ancient and recent, have addressed and referred to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with different names. In fact, the name HaKadosh Baruch Hu in of itself is one of those names. In Europe it was the Eibishter, in Talmudic times the Shekhinah. However, as noted previously, there are 7 Shemot HaKadoshot that are written but not pronounced in their written form. And each of these Shemot reflect a particular and unique aspect of God's relationship with Bnei Yisrael. As, for example, and multiple authorship views notwithstanding, there are times in which Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is used, there are times in which Elokim is used, and there are times in which a combination of both Yud-Kei Vav-Kei and Elokim can be found, such as, for example, Ki Ani Hashem Elokeichem, where Hashem here reflects a God of mercy. Elokim, on the other hand, is a God of severity, a God of judgment. And in the Kabbalistic model, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is a God who works through the Midah of Chesed, whereas Shem Elokim works through the Midah of Gevurah. Similarly, with the remaining Shemot HaKadoshot, they represent Giluyim, revelations from God, at one particular level of Kedusha or another. Accordingly, when Moshe maintains that the Bnei Yisrael, upon hearing of the imminent Geula, will ask Ma Shmo, the question really is how, which aspect of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be used in the redemption process. This is the approach of the Sipurna and the Ramban. The Sipurna writes, Hini Hashem Yora al Hatsura Ha'ishiyot. A name reflects a particular personality character trait. Kaviyachol. This could also be applied to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and hence the question he goes on to interpret as Be'eze Poel Nimshach Mimenu. What kind of an activity, an action that will emanate from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shabo Yikra B'Shem, through which that action will be identified with a particular name, and that particular name or force, Shalachacha, has sent you Lehotziyanu, to take us out from Egypt. This option is also rejected by Rashi from the standpoint of the Pshuta Shel Mikra, because it is highly unlikely that after many generations of slavery and servitude, and upon hearing that the God of the Avot has sent a person to fulfill a commitment made at the Brit Ben Habatarim for the redemption of the people from their Galut, they would be very concerned as to which of the Shemot HaKadoshot will be used by HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that redemption, whether it would be Yud-Kei Vav-Kei or Elokim or Kel or Shaddai or Tzvaot. For them to ask this question of Ma Shmo would also be highly unlikely. And therefore the Rebbe in the Sikha suggests that Rashi is forced into looking at a third option, and that third option is to redefine the question of Ma Shmo, and that redefinition results in God's response, that Eheyeh Asher Eheyeh, which Rashi, sensitive to the redefinition of the word Ma Shmo, then goes on to offer a very different reading and understanding to the response Eheyeh Asher Eheyeh, not as a name of God, but Eheyeh Imam B'tzara Zot, just as I have been and are with them in this situation of persecution. Eheyeh Imam B'shibud Shar Malkiot, I will also be with them in any further persecutions that the nation as a whole will